The South African poultry industry is still in crisis over the trade of poultry products. Both consumers and employees are left to carry the burden of the substantial increase in dumped product that has occurred in recent years. Since the beginning of the year, more than 3,500 workers have lost their jobs. Now RCL Foods have intervened by initiating a program that has reduced its shift to one. Concerns over imports are growing as the local market becomes non-competitive. Lebogang Mokoena and her husband are poultry farmers. Their farm produces a total of 120,000 chickens, which are fed on a 35-day cycle and then sent off. But like many chicken farmers, the Mokoenas fear they cannot compete in an unfair environment.
The imports that have come into the country, not only the US, because obviously there's imports coming from everywhere, they've had a negative impact on us in a sense that we've had to let go of some of our staff.
Statistics South Africa has attributed the higher than expected consumer price inflation because of the sharp increases in the price of poultry meat. A year-on-year increase in CPI to 6.8%, compared with the CPI of 6.6% in November 2016. Food inflation, one of the major drivers of inflation, recorded an 11% increase. An increase in poultry, mainly frozen chicken, it increased by 6.4% in December alone. As the government raises tariffs on chicken, people are calling for more action on imports from the EU and America, which they believe are harming the industry.
To close some of our farms and shift is directly related to the escalation of this crisis, to the point over the last 5 years where we've got to make a decision about staying alive.
Many jobs are at risk due to farm or processing plant closures. The Food and Allied Workers Union blame EU countries, accusing them of dumping cheap chicken in the country. But experts say imports is not the cause for this industry's crisis.
Don't agree that imports are responsible at all for the state of the local industry. I think it would only be fair to say that we can see the local industry is struggling. It hurts us to see them bleeding, and we have great sympathy with people that are being retrenched. We think that's a very, very sad situation for the industry and for the country as a whole. But from our perspective, there are totally different reasons for the current struggles of the local poultry industry. Firstly, local poultry is very much captive to the maize price, and the maize price has increased substantially due to droughts over the last 6 to 9 months, and that has very badly affected their bottom line.
So it's just clear, it's not about them allowing us to compete. They're protecting their own chicken market because they don't want somebody who produces chicken 20% cheaper than them to come and mess up their economy like they're doing to ours.
But despite the negative impact of imported poultry, President Jacob Zuma says the economic ties with the EU and the US are still important.
Much more still needs to be done to support agriculture. We also appeal to South Africans as well to buy local products so that we can create and save jobs.
But the Trade and Industry Department says it's important to strike a balance on chicken imports.
Give a current example means recognizing that when trade partners or domestic importers tell us that the problems in our poultry industry are due to competitiveness challenges, their point of departure is not a desire to improve the performance of our industry, but to persuade us not to take steps to reduce their imports.
The problem started when foreign producers sold cuts of brown meat classified as waste, normally sold below the cost of production, which is the trade definition of dumping.
3 of the 10 countries that are allowed to export to South Africa have been found guilty of dumping by ITAC. The EU has, in its own wisdom, chosen to not challenge that decision. That's their choice. What that means is, in law, they're dumpers. Ask anyone who still believes Oscar Pistorius is not guilty. All the courts in the land have said guilty. End of story. ITAC has said guilty. End of story. The EU are dumpers. And that's why we're suffering. The EU is a high-cost producer. According to a study by a Dutch university, one of the best agricultural universities in the world, the University of Wageningen, we can produce a slaughtered whole bird for less than any of the EU countries they survey.
But with no change in sight, economists say the poultry industry needs to learn to compete with the markets by reducing their production costs.
The best benefit to the local consumers would be if the local producers, chicken producers, could improve their efficiency to such a state that they could then compete with global suppliers. You know, I think that's what it comes to. It's the same in the general commodities market. You have to be globally price competitive, and that is what our industry has to be.
However, reports suggest the EU is of the view that the crisis is caused more by the structural challenges affecting the poultry sector rather than by EU imports. The South African poultry industry is in dire need of an intervention. Farmers blame imports. However, economists suggest that the industry needs to learn how to compete on a global scale. Now, with the growing divide between chicken importers and the local poultry industry, it is unclear whether the best interests of the workers and consumers are being considered.